We got a fantastic episode of the Comic Club podcast today. This episode features an incredible comic named Auggie Smith. Auggie tours the nation, and he's appeared on Bob and Tom, and, well, he's done a lot of other things too. Very wonderful comic. I'm so happy to have been able to interview him. I just want to take this quick second and remind everyone to follow me on Twitter, at the Comic Club. Please follow our guests on Twitter as well, and send them a message if you appreciate the interview that they gave. Also, please subscribe to me on YouTube or on iTunes, however you're hearing this, and, thumbs up it or leave a positive comment. All right, thank you all very much. We're getting on with the episode. So this is it, man. I'm sitting down with the Auggie Smith, star of hit podcast Motivationally Speaking.
Well, we're on hiatus.
We're on hiatus.
It was more of like the English television version of a podcast where we do like 12 episodes and then we're gone. We're gone for years at a time, but we'll be back.
I was just going to ask when we can expect another episode, because I've listened to all of them over the last week. And
Have you really?
Yeah, I just started re-listening to them, and I got up to number 7 last night with was it Jesse Joyce? Mm-hmm. Holy shit, that's got to be like number 1 episode of anything ever.
Really?
I ended up listening to it twice in a row last night. I fell asleep listening to it. I fucking loved it so much, and I'm a huge fan of your podcast.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks, man.
How do you be a good host? Like, what goes into the prep work for those podcasts?
Well, for me, just about everybody I had on Motivationally Speaking, I've known from the old days. I mean, some of those people I'd known for 15 years, and so I sort of know where to lead them. I almost enjoyed some of them. Like, I had never met Tony Sam. So that was the first time we'd ever really had a conversation. So it's a bit different that way. So with the guys I was leading Jesse because he has some of the best story. He's the most entertaining man in the history of the world. That's what Jesse is. That is the crown that he wears. It is the burden that he brunts every day long, is that he is the most entertaining human being in the world. So I knew that if I could just lead him into a couple different stories. But the other thing is, and I think this is the important part, is you got to trust your guest. You got to trust that they're going to be interesting. You had them on in the first place anyway, right? So you just got to trust it, and you got to let them go.
You mentioned leading them into stories, and I feel like I've tried to do that, but I don't want to expect what the answer is. So is there a balance between setting them up for softballs as opposed to the discovery of the unknown?
I think that this is a trait that I've sort of gained with age, which doesn't make it a good or a bad trait. It's just something that I've taken on. When I know that a story's good, I like watching other people's reaction to it that haven't heard it before. So like when I was doing the podcast with Jesse, I knew that Justin Lenz was there, who had never heard of any of these stories, who was doing the tech work, and Dax hadn't heard most of them. So just leading him into talking about this stuff and then watching their reaction is just as enjoyable for me. So it's, even if I know what's coming, I just like knowing that other people are experiencing it for the first time.
So do you try to have an audience there when you record a podcast? I
think for me, that's always going to be the best way to do it. I mean, I think for me, because that's just, I like working in a group. I like having people around and people to bounce stuff off. And also, I think that having listened, I've been a fan of talk radio forever. And even like the crappy morning zoo stuff, I enjoy the dynamic between everybody and going back and forth. So that's always the way I've imagined it. I've enjoyed the guys that just work by themselves and do, like fresh air conversations and everything. But I can't imagine that's ever going to be what I'm good at. I'm better in a group like that. The wacky morning Aug. Yeah. Well, that used to be what comics did, right? This would happen. You'd go out on the road, and you wouldn't ever quite get the show. The show never happened, and you didn't want to be a road comic anymore, usually because you had knocked up a waitress, and so you ended up in whatever Midwestern town that was, and then you do the morning radio. You'd end up on morning radio. This happens to me all the time, that I go around, I would do clubs, and I'd end up doing morning radio with a former road stand-up comedian. Yeah, but now that isn't really a gig anymore because radio isn't a gig anymore. And now people have just set up podcasts, and they're doing it that way.
Well, I know you've also been a guest on several podcasts. Notably, to me, is the Stand Up Chronicles podcast.
Which one was that? This was is that the one they do in Peoria?
It is.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe that's the location.
Yeah.
It's done by Adam. I just know his first name. And the reason I know for sure you were on that is he is the one who got me set up with this podcast. Like, I was listening to him for months, and then I sent him an email asking him, what equipment do you use? How do you do it? And he sent me back the answer. And so I guess it's a small world. And it's just...
No, I've known that guy since he started, and it's funny because he used to have this bit where he would do the Green Lantern slogan or whatever. The Green Lantern says something that it's basically his mission statement, right? And I don't know what he calls it, but he worked that into his act, and I thought that was the most hysterical thing I'd ever seen. And I didn't even know what the Green Lantern slogan was, but having him work... And so what he does is he goes to the Jukebox Comedy Club, and he just goes in between shows on Friday, Saturday. And so you're in the green room, and you're like sweaty, and you've performed, and it's either gone really well or not, so you have those emotions, and the adrenaline's going, and you're thinking about the next show. And then I think that he gets a lot of honesty in that show by doing it that way, because that's a different emotion than I couldn't try right now to become that guy that I am either right after or right before going on stage. I don't know how I morph into that dude. It's like it's a Wolfman thing where you just become a different guy right before and after stage, and he catches you right in that moment that you only experience on Friday and Saturday nights as a comedian of being in between shows.
When you're going to be a guest on someone's podcast, what are you thinking going in? Is it just a normal conversation? Or is there something else that's going in your mind, even maybe on this podcast? Are you trying to perform?
Well, yeah, that's something that evolves over years. It's okay. So when I started doing stand-up and I started going on the road, doing morning radio was a big part of it. You'd go around and you'd do these shows. So I knew that I wasn't going to be a draw on my name alone. So I decided that I had to get good at that. I had to get good at doing the morning radio. And I got really, really, really good at it, of going in for 10 minutes. And the way that I did it, and comedians argue about this, but I always came in with bits. I came in with a couple of bits that I was going to hit, and I was going to talk as long as they would let me talk. And the best interview, the best morning radio you can ever do is when the guys don't talk at all. They're just laughing at you talking. Doesn't matter what they ask, you know where you're going. But I find that in a podcast, I don't want to keep that up for an hour and a half. So I'd rather have the conversation, and work stories into it. And also, I think there's something about the podcast that people don't want bits. They don't want something scripted. I think that there are shows for that, but that isn't what this is. So I couldn't imagine coming on a podcast and having a bit prepared, but I have had times where I knew I was going to tell a story when something had recently happened that I knew I was going to talk about.
Yeah, I guess for podcasts, I'm not really asking about bits, but just a heightened energy in the conversation. Like, do you feel a need to keep words flowing, or will you let it breathe if it needs to?
If you're a performer, you're always a performer, man. You can't help it. You can't help when the lights are on, and even if the light is one microphone and 500 downloads, then that's still, it's on. It's go time. Yeah, bring the funny. Or get out. We want one thing of you, and that is you taking us someplace with your words, man. That's what we want. And if you can't do that, hit the streets, man. Hit the bricks, you bum. And that's what comedians need to remember. This is what they want from us. They want us to take them someplace. Do it.
How do you do it?
Fucking grab the reins and take them. Take them. Here's the deal. Okay, now how do you do that? Now that's a huge question that I've spent the entirety of my adult life trying to answer, is how do you, because for me, it's a great show when you just walk in to see a live performance and you sit down and for an hour and a half, you just don't even think about your life. You get completely taken into this world that's being created for you, whether it be a band or a musical or a movie or especially a stand-up performance. I just want to feel an emotion of laughter and joy or shock or whatever it is that they're trying to get from me. I just want to go there, man, and I'll let them take me there. I will absolutely let them take me there. So that is what is expected of us as performers. Sometimes we forget that. It's that big. It's that much. It isn't just go up, tell a joke, deliver a punchline, and get a response. You want to take them. You want to create art that takes them out of their life. That's what we should be aiming for. And I think that half the time the mistake that we make is that we don't shoot big enough, right? We don't take it to that final beautiful natural conclusion. We open from let's just get through this. We open from the point of let's just get the jokes out. But it's got to be grander than that. It's got to be bigger than that. Because at this point, man, there are so many other choices than watching a guy talk. I mean, imagine that. Imagine leaving your house where you have 200 channels, where movies cost $200 million to make. Somebody spent $200 million, and you could sit on your couch and you could watch that thing. Or you can fucking get a babysitter and get out into the cold and get in your car and drive some fucking place and buy tickets and sit down at a round table and hear a guy talk. It's amazing that people still do that. It's amazing that people come see us, which is why we have to shoot for the $200 million movie every time we go on stage. We have to shoot for taking them to that same place that movie would have taken them to, which was out of their lives and into the zone that you're creating, into the universe that you're creating with your act. Take them to that place. And that's what's expected of art. That's what's expected of us.
When you say shoot big enough, what do you mean by that? Are you talking the subject matter of your material?
I'm talking about every time you go on stage, you should be aiming for the perfect show. You should be aiming for you have them from the moment you start to the moment it's over. And they are enthralled by your every word. And there's enormous laughter when that's what is appropriate at the time. And when you're done, they're so sad that you're done. And they want you to keep on going because it's been so wonderful all the way through. We should be aiming for that every time we go on stage. Aim for the big, big, perfect show. That's what you got to... And because, damn it, every once in a while, it's not perfect. The stand-up is not perfect. Not often, but sometimes it's a small crowd. Sometimes they're distracted. Sometimes you're in a bar where they're playing pool. Sometimes there's shitty sound and no lights. Sometimes there's no stage. And you say to yourself, wow, this sucks. And you go up and you plow through your jokes because you're expected to do a period of time. But you can never think that way, man, because here's the thing, comedians. Anytime we're at a comedy show, the only place we want to be is on stage. We don't want to be watching it. We want to be on stage. And when we get that opportunity, we need to remember that. We need to remember it every time. We need to remember every time we go on stage. You got to remember, this is exactly the thing that I want to be doing. This is what I've been working for. However long I've been doing this, whether it be 2 years or 20, this is exactly what I'm working for. And we fucking forget it. We forget it all the time. And I see people's head down as they walk on stage. Like, oh, God, I don't want to do this. And I do it. I'm not saying I don't do it. I do the same thing. But you got to put that out of your head, man.
Let's talk about the perfect show. Is that perfectly polished bits? Is there some room for new material?
Oh, there's no definition of the perfect show, man. It's different for everybody. But the great thing about the perfect show is that I haven't had it yet. I'm not quite there yet. I've come very, very close. I've had some very, very good comedy shows. I've had shows that when I die and meet whatever force created the universe and decides on my next path, I would want them to see that show as an example of the man that I am. I've had shows that good, okay, but I have not had the perfect show. I've had very, very good shows. And I don't know what happens when I have the perfect show. I don't know what happens after that. I don't know if the earth just opens up and it's all over. It's like The Sopranos and it just stops. I don't know what it is. But since that's the thing I've spent my life working for artistically, that's what I'm going to keep after.
Do you analyze your sets at all?
Not nearly enough. I mean, I think that a good artist is constantly examining his own life. And a good artist is constantly examining his own art. And hopefully these two things are intertwined anyway. But isn't it odd? You ever think about this? So many of the performers that we have all envied over the years, and they may be musicians, they may be comedians, they may be writers, were mentally, completely, and totally fucked up. They were addicts, they were suicidal, they were depressives, they treated their families like shit, they didn't take care of their kids, they were low-life gamblers, they were shooting drugs in alleyways, some of them choked on their own vomit. I admire people that choked on their own vomit. Why? Because of their art. And so you say to yourself, how could this person possibly be examining himself and his art and have those two things intertwined when his art is so great and his life sucks so bad? How is that possible? And I don't have a great answer to that one yet either, but I'm going to keep after it. I'm going to keep after, because they're also artists that are fine. There are artists that I love that have a wife and they have kids and they're not assholes. They're just regular guys. So I don't know. I don't know which one we should be shooting for.
Well, you mentioned examining your life. How do you extract humor from your self-examination?
Yeah, exactly. Right? There's see, I've watched so many different parts. I've watched comedy change over the years. So I'm not the first one to say this, but when comedy clubs, which by the way are one of the youngest art forms, the comedy club, as it exists now, has only existed for like 40 years. There's been comedians, obviously, but the comedy show of MC feature headliner, that is a fairly new thing to America. And so we watched it go in different stages, where in the 80s, after it got very popular, and like I say, I'm not the first one to say this, a lot of it was people that weren't naturally very funny sort of doing impressions of what they thought comedy should be. You know, it was set up punchline, and you had a jacket with the sleeve pushed up, and there was, if you were talking about drugs, it was so funny to say that you did drugs as opposed to, because that was counterculture at the time. And so anything slightly counterculture of I drive drunk or I told the cop to go fuck himself, you know, that was one of, but see, then we've watched comedy evolve and evolve and evolve, and now I watch guys that talk about how afraid they are all the time. I watch guys that talk about all of their different problems in their relationships and sexually, and it's real. You watch guys that talk about family members' deaths, for Christ's sake, and they make it something interesting. They take you to that place. And you know what there wasn't when I started? Was the out gay comic. There was like 5. There was 5 people. They were all women, and they filled theaters. And now it's a new thing in comedy where people tell long stories about their gay sex life, and people that would normally be disgusted by the thought of that are laughing their ass off. We're watching this job get better and better and better. I would put the best 10 guys today up against the best 10 guys of any time in history. I think that this is the best time for stand-up comedy ever because it keeps on evolving and it keeps getting better. Now, for me, the joke, it works this way in the evolution of comedy. You start out and everybody else is an asshole. We here in this room, we're cool, right? Everybody else, assholes. What they eat, the way they drive, how fat they are, fuck those assholes. Okay. Then you get to a point where they're assholes, but I'm an asshole too. I'm an asshole too, and here's what I do. Then pretty soon, it's we're assholes. We're all assholes. You know you do it. Now here's what I want to get to. And some people are doing this now, and they do it really well. And that is, you're an asshole. You sitting in front of me at the table with your fat fucking face. Where are your kids right now? Who are they with? Do you know? Do you know this person? I look at that, and that's the evolution of great comedy, is when you can do that. And because the I'm an asshole thing, that was a huge deal. And we did it great, and we've done it great. But it's time for you're an asshole. That's what I say to comedy.
You mentioned the evolution of comedy. How do you try to make it evolve for yourself? How do you get to the next stage?
Yeah, right. So, wait, did you read my diary before this? Like all the questions that I have about myself and my life constantly? How do you evolve as a stand-up comedian? It's, okay. So, when I started, I wrote one really long bit. Like I was just doing setup punchline, and it was just, jokes. They were just jokes that had no real purpose. And then I wrote a 4-minute bit that had a bunch of different punchlines in it, and it had a huge closer at the end that wrapped it all up. And I thought to myself, that's what I need to be doing. That's the kind of bit I need to do. Now that became to be known as the rant. I didn't invent the rant. There are people that are better at the rant than me, but you would describe my best bits that way. They sort of just keep going. There's a bunch of different punchlines, and at the end, it brings it back to the original point. I have a few jokes like that I'm very proud of, and that's the way that I tried to write. And here's the deal. When you're a young man and you're in your 20s, everything is so amazing to you. The way that people act to one another, it's so amazing to you, and it's so easily to judge. Look at that fucking asshole and write a joke about that fucking asshole. And that was easy for me because I had all these emotions anyway, and I was good at yelling. I was really good at yelling, and I was good at being mad. And so I'd get up on stage and I'd be mad, and people would be mad with me. And it was this cathartic thing where there would be beautiful punchlines, and then I started to work in political satire, and then that became so good. And then September 11th happened. Oh my God, man, because my career was really stalled. It had just really stalled. And I was doing good work. But I wasn't. I wasn't making real money yet. I was working consistently, but it was really shit gigs. And September 11th happened, and I just started to write jokes about America's paranoia. And half of it was just real stories, that I'm just up there telling real stories. And it became something. And so pretty soon, about 20 minutes of my hour-long set was September 11th. And it was about our fear. And it was talking about all the stuff that, you'd kind of heard rules that you're not supposed to talk about it. But there's always a way to talk about something. There's always a way to talk about something. And so, man, I felt like I was really rolling then. And then I did my first Bob and Tom a year or two after that, when my act started to get a lot better. And then I started to do a lot bigger clubs for a lot more money. But here's what I'm running into now. In the evolution of the writing itself, I don't have that same anger that I ever had. I look around now, and I see people that are just kind of doing the best they can, man. Everybody's trying hard. Nobody's trying to be an asshole. Everybody's doing their best. And who the fuck am I to start pointing fingers like, yeah, look at these idiots? I just have such a hard time with that now. And so the evolution of my writing It's going to come in finding absurdity in very simple things. I think that I had taken on the big issues for a long time, and I think that instead, for me, the evolution is going to be shrinking my writing a little bit and talking about simpler stuff. Now, I talk about getting married, and that isn't interesting to half my crowd. I know that because I remember I was a single guy for 40 fucking years. I remember hearing guys talk about their marriage, and I did not give a shit. So I've decided, what can I talk about that single people would relate to inside of the marriage itself? So it's stuff like that I think is going to be the evolution for me, because I don't have that much of an opinion on fucking Syria anymore. I don't know. I don't think we should lob bombs at people, and I don't know how to make that funny. I used to know how to make that funny, because I used to think we should lob bombs at people, and that's funnier. It's much funnier to think that.
I really enjoy angry comics, and I will try to do anger on stage, but a lot of times it just doesn't work out.
It's because it's got to be real, man. It's got to be real. I mean, the emotion has to come from a real place. Even when that guy is plastering on that fake anger every night, you know that it started, the good ones, you know that it started from someplace real. So the guys that are really good at it, they actually feel these things. Colin Quinn actually feels those things and then is a brilliant writer on top of all of it. He's just a brilliant, precise writer with his descriptions. Holy shit, so good.
Well, you mentioned getting the audience to be mad with you at what you're mad about. Do you have a specific strategy for doing that?
What I've found is that I try, and this is going to sound odd after everything I've just said, I try not to take a consistent stance on something, meaning that if I share an opinion, the opinion is going to be very satirical. I'm going to be sharing a ridiculous opinion that nobody could ever possibly think, and then trying to make that interesting. Because comedy comes from, you either take the ridiculous and you make it accessible, or you take the accessible and you make it completely ridiculous. You either blow a simple thing out of proportion, or you take a ridiculous huge thing and you make it very easy and matter of fact. Now, that isn't what all comedy comes from, but that's where my favorite comedy comes from. So when you're talking about bigger, larger issues that we should be upset about, whether it be war or foreign policy, you make that smaller. You don't blow that up. You blow the little things way out of proportion. When they pass a law against the porn stars wearing condoms, small thing, you make it huge. You make it the biggest issue of the day. You make it something we should be protesting about, because that's funnier. But something like Syria, you make it very small. Very, very small.
Are you different on stage than you are off?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. The way that I used to describe the guy I was on stage, he was basically the perfect version of myself. Like, he always has the right word. He's not afraid of anything. He's never socially awkward. He always looks as good as he can look. And man, you want to be that guy all the time. And some of the comics are that guy all the time. The thing that I run into is, I have a hard time making people in the real world feel awkward. Like, you watch those hidden camera shows or wherever, where they go and they just fuck with people. I could never do that. Like, on stage, I can do it easily, because you all came to me, and I'm in charge now, and I take that responsibility of being in charge of the room very seriously, and I'm good at that, and I'm fine with making people, but going out into the world, where you're on their turf now, and you're still making them feel awkward, man, I have a real hard time with that. I can't bring myself to do that with people. So I think that if I did have that talent, If I did have that, but like, am I the same on stage or off? Yeah, completely. But I guess I'd be different if I had a camera. I have done stuff with a camera where I'm much easier to talk to people because you have that thing sort of hide behind of, hey man, it's all just, we're all just playing a part in this gigantic theater piece called life, huh?
How do you become that guy who always has the right word?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. What is that magical thing that clicks on before you go on stage that just lets you grab every part of your lexicon and just each word is precisely put in where it exactly, just surgically put in where it should be. And all the references are just there at the top of your head. And you talk and just brilliance comes out. How do you get that? I don't know, man. The funniest I'm ever going to be is 10 minutes before I go on stage. It's the funniest I'm ever going to be. And it's because, man, I'm getting focused on my environment and I'm ready to go to work. And it's fight or flight, and I know I can't flight. I know I can't do that because this is the thing that I have to do. And you take yourself to this other place, man. And I don't know. And what I'd like to do is when I'm writing for stage, I'd like to be able to harness that guy. But I have a hard time harnessing that guy, which is why I got to go to open mics. I got to go to open mics, the shittier the better, because it takes me to my best writing place.
So do you do your writing on stage at those open mics?
Right before or after is where I write a lot of punchlines. A lot of punchlines get written right then. And yeah, that's the thing. Like during the day, I'd like to wake up and I'd like to sit down with a notebook and write for a couple hours. But I just can't take myself to the proper writing space. I can think of ideas, but I don't hit the hard punchlines, and I can't script things like I can. I don't know. There's just a different energy that comes about you.
So when you're writing before or after the shows, is it in a notebook or is it on a computer? Or
It was on a notebook for years. And man, I've left dozens of notebooks in dozens of shitty bars over the years. But now, iPhone, baby. Notes. If I ever lost my iPhone, I'd be completely lost. The notes section. I can just speak it into it, and then there it is. Ah! Fabulous. Another way that comedy has changed.
Do you use full sentences, or is it just the idea?
That's the thing is, if you think of a specific punchline, write that thing down. You're not going to remember it. Write down every word, because every word is so important in a joke. Each word is there for a reason. You cannot substitute different words most of the time. So if you think of the perfect punchline, write it down specifically every word of the punchline. And if the bit itself isn't completely done, you can just write down the idea for the bit. But each specific punchline inside that bit, man, you got to get that down. You got to get the wording right. And sometimes that takes a while. I've had bits 3 years. 3 years I did them before I got the wording right. Before I was like, that's the way you got to do that thing. Yeah, and that's the thing is bits should always be evolving too. You know, I mean, not just your act in general, and not just you as an artist, but if you're going to continue to do a bit for a while, people always wonder when you should retire it. Like, if you have your hour, and inside how long should you be shuffling in and out jokes? Some of these guys, Louis C.K., Stanhope, they're putting out a new hour every year and a half. I don't know how they're doing it. They're amazing. They're amazing that they can do that. And I wish I was that good. I'm not that good. But I stop doing bits when the bit stops evolving. When the bit stops becoming something that's better than itself, and it just becomes words that you're saying, and it's never going to get bigger, and it's never going to mean something else. That's when you got to stop doing it. Because then that's when you just become a dude that's just repeating something up there and not actually giving at least the impression of creating something.
How do you know you reach that point if you're not listening back to your sets all the time? What's going on in your head to measure your progress?
You know, on stage when you have energy and emotion for something and you don't. There comes a time when you're just up there and you're saying the joke and you're, oh my God, I can't. If you have that experience, if I can't believe these words are coming out of my mouth again, that's when you got to get rid of it. Because I'll tell you, there aren't many absolute truths in comedy, but one absolute truth is, if you're not having fun, they're going to know. They know right away if you're not having fun, and it shows in your act. And if you're not having fun, then why the hell should they, man? Yeah, you got to be enjoying yourself. And when that bit just loses the zing for you, then you just stop enjoying yourself, and it affects the rest of your performance.
Let's talk about the generation of new material. All right, let's say you have to do a set tonight, 10 minutes. You can't use any of the jokes you've ever written before.
Okay.
What are you going to talk about?
Wow. For me, I would start by hitting the internet web pages for news and seeing if there was anything that clicked on a thought of what's going on in the world. Then I would write down every incident that I had with another human being over the course of the last few days. Like, I went to Subway Sandwiches and I ordered a sandwich. And what happened? Did anything happen? It happened to me today that I gave her a $10 bill and she gave me back change for a $20. So in my hand I'm holding $12 when I had just given her $10. And I knew that I'd given her $10. And then there's the sandwich. So you have that quick moment of put it in my pocket and walk away and know that this fucking $9.25 an hour poor girl is going to either get fired or have to replace the $10 so that I can eat a free sandwich some other day, or you give her back the money, and you have that quick moment in your head. So perhaps you try to write something from that. Think about every incident you've had with a human being. It doesn't even need to be something interesting. Just driving past somebody in a parking lot. Did I make eye contact with somebody? What was the emotion that you had then? It's, comedy has to come from your own emotions, your own experiences, but then the other thing is, it's got to be that the best comedy is when you stumble upon an emotion or a thought that everybody has, but they don't realize they have it. When you can point out, have you ever felt this way? Then people say, holy shit, wow, I have felt. And then they're quite interested in everything you have to say after that. When you can point out something that goes on in their life that they don't realize goes on in their life.
All right, so now we have something to talk about. How do we refine this into a bit? How many times do you tell it on stage? What do you do right after you tell it for the first time? How much do you change it for the next time?
Okay. You write out the bit as big as it can go. You take apart every part of the joke. You write as many punchlines as you possibly can for each part of the joke. And then you chop and you chop and you chop and you prune it back like those bonsai trees. You imagine the joke and then you take out everything that isn't that. And so a perfect joke would be, you would write just pages and pages. It would be paragraphs. And there'd be a lot of punchlines in there. And at the end, maybe it's a one-liner. Maybe you prune it back so it's just a tag to another bit. I mean, that's the idea, is that how long does that take? There's no set time for it. I mean, if it's a current event, you got to get it out there and you got to do it quickly. But if it's something that's an evergreen bit, well, then you have you have your whole life to get that bit right. And you never know what's going to be funny until you do it, man. That is the thing about this job that I will never get past, is that I, in my head, think about these punchlines that are so perfect and so good, and nobody ever laughs at them. and you don't get it. And sometimes you keep doing it because what is wrong with the rest of the world that they don't see this? I see this. How do they not see this? Yeah. Oh, that one makes me crazy. But you never know, you know. You're not the final arbiter of what is funny, turns out.
Okay, so we've got one bit. Maybe we've got a couple other bits. How do we structure them properly? Do you have any...
This is a great one. For me, if I'm going to do a 45-minute set, it's best to open with talking about something that's right then, something that happened that day, something that's happened on the show, talking about your surroundings, talking about the town that you're in for the first couple minutes, just so they know you're a human being. You're going to be reading and reacting to what's going on around you. This isn't just words that I'm spitting out at you. Okay? So that's the first part of your set, ideally, is something right in the moment. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes you start out with whatever opening joke you knew you were going to do, but that's what you hope for. Now, as the 45 minutes is progressing, you're hopefully laying out your life for them, your feelings on things. If you have a topic that you're going to be hitting over and over again, hopefully you know this joke has to go after that joke or else it doesn't work. So for me, pretty much my 45 minutes or my hour, I know exactly what I'm going to do and exactly the order I'm going to do it. And I could do that in my sleep. I have it memorized where I know this joke goes into this joke and so on. And when you have it memorized, then you can go off script. So when you have it memorized, then during the middle of another joke, you can go off and talk about something else, talk about somebody in the news or in the crowd or something that's happened, and you always know you can go back to that set script that you have. So you have the script, but you don't use the script. Now, how do you put the script together? It's different in everybody's act. Obviously, there's the old rule of you do your second best joke first and your best joke last. It's a bullshit rule. It's a dumb rule. It doesn't make any sense to me. Your last joke doesn't even have to be your best joke. It just has to be your last joke. Your first joke doesn't have to be anything in the order of how many. It's a dumb way to do it that way. But that all being said, people need an ending. You need to give them a goddamn ending. One of the mistakes the comedians make that drive me absolutely up a tree, when you're emceeing a show and you have just delivered 10 or 15 minutes worth of material, give them a chance to applaud for you. Say your name, put up your hand, give them some sort of signal that the act is over, and now they can show their appreciation for what they've seen from you and then move on to the rest of the show. Now, that is true for all the acts in the show, and for the last act, it's also true. There has to be an ending. There has to be this started someplace and this went someplace, and this is the logical conclusion to what you've just seen.
What
they
is an ending?
They have to feel that way.
What
exactly? Exactly.
That's such a good answer.
Exactly.
This is one of the segments that I liked the most in your podcast, and you just sort of touched on it, so I want to get to it. Auggie Smith, what do people do on stage that pisses you off?
Oh, my God, man.
Take as much time as you need.
There are so many things. Okay, first of all, if you have another job, okay, if you're an electrician or you make sandwiches or you're a temp worker, Don't fucking tell your crowd that. These people think you actually do stand-up comedy. And if you're at an open mic, that's one thing. And it still bothers me there. But if people pay to see a show and then find out that their comedian is a valet parker, I'm surprised they don't fucking storm whoever works there and kills them. Fucking drives their steak knife into their fucking neck. Because they should. They should be pissed off. If you want to talk about your job, you talk about the job you used to have. Now, does that take away from honesty in comedy? Yes! It's the exception that proves the rule. Now, that being said, don't wear fucking shorts on stage. Just don't wear shorts on stage, okay? You want to look like a homeless person? Look like a fucking homeless person. You want to make your crowd feel like shit for having the nerve to come see you? Fine, do that. Just cover your fucking knees, you asshole. Nobody wants to see that. God damn it. Have some respect for the people that fucking come see you. Don't yell into the microphone. If you want to yell, pull the fucking microphone back. Don't you know that it makes your voice louder? That's what it fucking does. God damn it. Don't tell the crowd how bad this sucks. Wow, this sucks, because the crowd, they're your only fucking allies in the world. The other 7 billion people that didn't come see your show, those guys are assholes. The 12 that are there are your best friends in the fucking world. Don't ask your crowd questions and then get mad at them for talking. You fucking idiot. You've just opened up a stand-up act to conversation, and now you're mad that they're talking to each other? Of course they're fucking talking to each other. You keep asking them fucking questions. Nobody wants to answer questions. Nobody sees the guy at the mall with the clipboard taking the poll and runs towards him. You fucking run away from him. They hate that. If you're gonna do a joke, just do the fucking joke. Don't ask people if they've ever seen game shows. Of course they've fucking seen game shows. Are you out of your goddamn mind? And if they haven't, are you not gonna do the joke? Of course you're gonna fucking do the joke anyway. It doesn't matter. And then, if you ask them the question, you have to tell them how to respond, okay? They don't know they have to applaud if you don't tell them to fucking applaud. And so some of them just raise their hand or answer in the affirmative because they've been asked a fucking question. And then you tear into them for that. Oh, I can't see you up here with the lights in my eyes. Well, they didn't fucking know that because they're not the professional fucking comedian, which you're supposed to be, you asshole. You fucking asshole. Besides that, move the microphone stand behind you if you take it out of the stand. And don't wrap the cord in loops. That one drives me crazy.
What do you mean by wrap the cord in loops?
Oh, haven't you ever seen that? Or they got the microphone cord, and the guy is just looping it with his hand. Go to any open mic, you'll see it tonight. People just, they take their free hand, and they loop the microphone cord. Oh, it makes me crazy. Because I used to do it, and I think that's why it makes me crazy. It's because I used to do it. Some guys will loop it around the mic stand, so when you get up there, it's just fucking permanently tied to the goddamn stand. I've seen that one. That one drives me crazy. Mainly, it's doing things that fuck it up for everybody else. Okay? All the great comics have burned the light. And if you're absolutely crushing, you know what? You burn the light by a few minutes. That ain't no thing. That's fine. I'm fine with that. But there are other things you can do that ruin it for everybody else. If you're going to start fucking talking to your crowd and ask them a bunch of questions, know that the crowd now thinks everything is open to conversation for everybody behind you. They all think that now we're just talking. And if that's your thing, is crowd work, fine. But be good at it. Be fucking good at it. Don't ask your crowd questions, and then when you're not funny enough to have something good to say about that, could just go off on him. Well, that didn't make any sense, what you just said. Actually, it made perfect sense to everybody else here, except for you, the comedian, who couldn't think of anything funny to say about it after you've opened yourself up for that.
How do you be funny doing crowd work, or how do you get better?
I suck at it. I don't do it. Yeah, and that's why I say, if you come to the Auggie Smith comedy show, nothing will be expected of you. You can sit down, you can order your drink, you can just be quiet and let me take over. I will take it from here. I won't ask you one question. I won't bring up the house lights and walk around and bother people. I'm not going to do that. That isn't what I do. So there's nothing that's expected of you. Now, if you invite yourself into the show, if unsolicited, and it will be unsolicited, that you yell something out of my show, then you're a part of it. Then I'm forced to respond and have you be part of the show. But for me, yeah, best show would be not talking to the crowd, because I want them to sit back and just watch, man. You know, so they've earned that. They've earned not having to do anything.
If someone's going to make themselves a part of your show, how are you going to handle it?
Yeah, see, when I was a younger man, I would just immediately start screaming at him. And I had a lot of funny rants that, were sort of half prepared and half coming off the top of my head usually. But now it's more like, hey, why are you talking to me? I'm working up here, sort of thing. And unless they're being dicks, I'm not really going to tear into them. But yeah, mostly it's a question. And I actually, sometimes I'll be on stage and I'll just do the old shh. And people just say, yeah, shh.
When you say you have a rant half prepared, what does that mean?
It means that you sort of know where you're going with it. It's like you're going to go off about, maybe the guy's dressed a little bit like a biker, and so you're going to start to describe his life as a biker, as you imagine his life to be, the place that he goes back to live and the people that live there with him, the animals that he owns, the jobs that he goes to, the hobbies that he has. Like, you describe all those things. A guy named Dwight Slade. You know who Dwight Slade is?
I don't.
He's a genius. And he's constantly on the road of evolving as a comedian. And he talked about that's what for crowd work, when you're talking to somebody, you imagine a cartoon version of their life. And then you play out that cartoon version of their life, which I thought is a very good way of putting it. It's you pick out whatever thing you're going to pick on, and you expand it just like you would a joke, and just describing their life as you must see it.
You mentioned part of your opener was going through whatever was on your mind at that moment. So are you talking about riffing?
Basically, it's that if you work in a theater and the theater is an old theater, or it's there's artwork on the walls of the theater, it's best to have a joke about that. If you're in a scenario that isn't the ideal comedy scenario, where it's like, obviously this isn't the only thing that's done here, it's important to point out whatever imperfections in your surroundings exist. If there is a loud air conditioning unit, or, you have to get out that you understand that that's happening. So if there's something, but it's best if that day there had been an incident, if that day some famous person had been arrested, if you go up on stage and you have 4 jokes about that, your crowd is going to say, holy shit, how did he do that so fast? That is so cool that he did that. And so if you have something about the surroundings, or sometimes when you say what's on your mind, sometimes it's just the thing on your mind. I had a show 10 years ago in Minneapolis at what's now called the House of Comedy. I forget what it was called then. And that morning I had to go to the hospital. And I had to go to the hospital because I was having problems with my balls. It's a long, complicated thing, but and so I was horrified. And I went on stage that night horrified. And the first 10 minutes, we're talking about my balls and my man junk and all the problems I was having with them and all of my fears. And that show was one of those shows that's probably one of the top 5 I've ever had in my life. To the point of where I had a guy come up last year in Wisconsin and tell me he was at that show. He was like, yeah, I saw you in Minneapolis. Like, yeah, I remember. And that was like a Thursday night. It was just, and it's because that was the only thing I was thinking about. And if I had spoken about anything else besides that, I would have been completely lying to my crowd. It's like if you're going through a breakup and that week shit is going down and then you have to get on stage, it'd be insane to open by talking about anything but that, because it's the only thing on your mind. I was on stage September 12th, 2001. And what else are you going to talk about? Well, how are you not going to work that in to the act? It's impossible.
Did you tell jokes about it?
At that point, it was we were very, very scared still. I mean, they weren't even sending planes up. We weren't exactly sure what had gone down. It was amazing that there was a comedy show, first of all. But for me, it was like, all right, this is happening, so we're going to do this show, and I don't know what's going on the street right now, maybe chaos. So there was just like little bit of talking about it during the show, just sort of working it in, and I had to open with something about it. Because how could you not? And I don't remember specifically what I said. I remember the dude I was working with, Chicago Steve Barkley. He's been around forever. He got on stage and he had a little American flag with him that he'd put on the stage every time before he started. It was cool.
I guess the reason I'm asking if you made any jokes about September 11th on September 12th is there such a thing as too soon?
Well, it's not too soon. It's what the joke is. It's always what the joke is. And it's like things like with September 11th, man, it was such an enormous event that specifically touched, I don't know what the number would be, 20,000 people. Out of the 3,000 people that died, their immediate families and people around them, you can say that this specifically touched them. And then the rest of us Americans, we can all say that it touched us and it meant something to us, but it didn't mean as much to us as those guys. But it still affected all of us. And so it's impossible not to discuss that when that's that much on your mind, when it's that much a part of the public dialogue and mostly the public fear, Because comedy, along with a lot of other things, has to be at least a little bit of a relief valve for stuff that we're horribly afraid of. The fact that we're able to laugh at that thing that we're horribly afraid of makes us stronger than it. It belittles that thing and whatever that huge fear thing is, terrorism or death in general or the monster hiding under your bed, whatever that thing is, you got to make fun of it or it wins, right? Right? Aren't we heroes?
We're heroes.
We're goddamn heroes. That's what we are. Yeah. Those soldiers, they also did stuff too. But the comedians that talked about it, those are the ones. Those are the unsung heroes in all this.
One of the things I really enjoy about your podcast is that you incorporate callbacks in them. Like you'll be talking about the news and then later you'll reference one of the jokes you hit on in the news. Are callbacks a thing you're naturally good at? Are you constantly looking for them?
I'm not. I'm not constantly good at them. But I know that people love them. They just love them. When you take the act back to it because they didn't expect it to be coming. I like them when you completely forget about the joke. Like you can start with, okay, now here's the problem with your kids. And then you do a 10-minute joke that seems to go everywhere except for that place, and then it ends with, and that's the problem with your kids. Whatever the thing may be that you're tying up in a bow at the end, and then people say, oh my God, we thought it was going to be a 30-second joke, and now he's taking us on this 10 to 15-minute journey and taking us back there. It's phenomenal, and it's very cool when people work it in. It's not my particular strength as a comedian, but I do work on it. I do, but just putting them in there for no reason. That's just like that earlier bit that I did, huh, guys? Yeah, that it doesn't work. The callbacks don't work that way.
One of the things I am very conscious about from doing this podcast and listening back to myself ask questions are hearing my verbal tics, the likes and ums and stutters. How do you eliminate those from your speech pattern?
If you think about them too much, you'll go mad. You'll just absolutely go mad. I was in speech therapy for 3 years when I was a kid because I had a pretty horrible lisp. Now, it's amazing that lisp only comes back when I think about it. When I think about it, then all of a sudden, it's the only thing that I can hear in my head, even though I've had to train myself to keep my tongue way back and tight. And I had to learn through comedy, because of comedy, I had to speak from the abdominals all the time because I get louder and I get softer a lot during my act if you don't do that specifically right. But if you think about, where's my hands right now? If you think about, do I breathe in and out right here? If you think about any of those things, you'll go absolutely mad. Like, I have a fairly new joke, and I don't know if it'll ever be a joke. I guess I keep working on it. And the only way the setup works is if I don't say else in the setup, meaning that the joke is, yes, men are responsible for genocide and war and racism, but let me tell you another thing that men are responsible for. Everything else. That's another thing men are responsible for. Everything else. Now, that joke only works is if I don't say, let me tell you something else men are responsible for. Everything else. That doesn't work. I have to say, let me tell you another thing men are responsible for. Okay. Just in that little word, and I always get it wrong. I always screw it up because in my head, I've just have this switch where I say the wrong thing. Now, when I nail it, when I say the time instead of the else, then it works. But it's that simple that if you think about that. Now, that going into the tics and the, oh my God, like, do you keep your hands up or down? Do you keep the microphone in the stand or do you take it out? And when you take it out, what do you do with your free hand? Where do you put your drink? Do you put it behind you? When do you take a drink? And how do you take a drink? Does it look weird when you drink that way? Are you going to wear a jacket on stage? Is it going to be buttoned? It can't be buttoned because you have to move your arms. Man, there's a million different things. Sometimes you'll go on stage and you'll realize that your shoe's untied. And it's the only thing you can think about in your head is how your goddamn shoe's untied up there. And everybody's going to know. I've gone on stage and I've had that dryer sheet been stuck to the back of my leg. And I've done a whole act with the dryer sheet on the back of my leg. And a whole crowd just thinking that was some joke I was going to pull out later. No, man. There's no joke there. I just had a dryer sheet on my leg. And you guys didn't say anything? Assholes.
All right, you mentioned the physicality on stage and overthinking what you do with your hands. How did you decide on what to do?
Yeah, I've sort of developed a physical style over the years, and I didn't really mean to, of directing punchlines specifically at people. Like I like to work one side of a joke to one side of the room, and then the punchline to the other side of the room. For whatever reason, that's just funny to me. And you think about it, like there's a few things that I do on stage physically that have developed over the years. And here's one of them that I do is sometimes I like to keep the microphone in the stand for like the first 10 minutes of my act. And I sort of hold it. I grab the bass end with my left hand, and then my right hand holds the microphone itself. So it's like a 50s crooner. And so when I walk around the stage, I can deliver a joke, like bent over a little bit, with the microphone stand up in my other hand into the microphone. And it's a very funny visual when you get the right silhouette on stage for the punchline. And I think comics need to think about stuff like this. Little things like this are really important to jokes. And another thing, and guys don't know this, and this is going to be called the Auggie Smith, because I am the only one I know currently that does it. So listen up. If you keep the microphone in the stand if you shake the microphone stand, most of the time it creates this beautiful vibration, this beautiful sort of, there's an earthquake going on, but it's subtle enough that it's underneath what you're saying. So if you really want to do a build-up to a joke, you shake the microphone stand, and it just creates this beautiful tension, this amazing tension for when the punchline finally comes out. Ah, God, it adds to it. And that's going to be called the Auggie Smith. And if it's not called the Auggie Smith, I'm going to be pissed off about it.
One of the things we're doing in my group of friends is we've started having celebratory roasts for people.
Nice.
Someone's going away, so we'll have a roast for them.
Okay.
Do you have any advice for writing good roast jokes?
I'll be honest with you, is that before the Comedy Central roast, I had never thought of jokes in that particular rhythm, in that style. That this guy is so whatever that this happens. This, whatever the metaphor is that they bring in for it. And my God, I've just really started to enjoy that joke more and more and more, of the roast style of joke. It seems like you got to come up with the weird metaphor. Like, he's poor, and what happens with poor people? What do they do, and where do they go? Well, who else is a group of people that goes and does that thing? So he's so poor that and it sounds like this other thing that he did. Man, that style of joke, holy shit, it's not new, but it's being done so well now. Every time you watch one of those roasts, they do that joke so well, and it's so mean. It's so mean. Do you think comedy's getting meaner? I think comedy's getting much meaner. I think that Anthony Jeselnik is a genius, but his show is so mean-spirited, it makes me physically ill. And it's just too hard for me to watch. And I don't know.
I feel like Tosh.0 is meaner. Because they're showing videos of people who are actually injured or broke their arm or whatever.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and they're making fun of the least of us, is what they're doing. People that have already been humiliated on the internet. Yeah, you think you've been humiliated on the internet? No. Now you're being humiliated on cable TV, you asshole, for trying to skateboard.
But these Comedy Central roasts, aren't they in some way just recreating the feeling you get when you're hanging out with a bunch of comics just cracking jokes at each other?
That's exactly it. And then that's what makes it okay. And so when Jeselnik brings the other people on his panel and they're cracking on each other, then that's great. I love that. But his monologues and his jokes are just about the school shootings and that whatever. It's too harsh, man. It's too rough for me, and I didn't think I'd ever say that. But in saying that, he is a genius. He's amazing. Though his writing and his writing style, it's so good. It's just too much for me.
But even if you don't necessarily write roast style jokes, when you're backstage hanging out with other comics, how do you burn them good? What do you go after?
Oh man, there's a million of them that I've always liked. Is my a guy gets off stage and it doesn't matter how it goes. It's just, what happened? Or after they've killed, wait till another comic or so and just go, so you going up? Yeah, I went up earlier. You didn't? Oh, no, I was in the room. I was in the room the whole time. Yeah. Go to the ones that, what I used to really fuck with people right before they go on stage. I'd like pull their shirt out. Or my favorite one was you get them into the hug and you don't let them out. Like as they're being brought up, you're just telling them something in their ear and holding them really tight as you know they have to get to stage.
Do you have a specific memory of a time that you've bombed?
Oh, I have so many times that I've bombed. I've been fired twice. Maybe three, no, twice. And one time was from the Stardome in Birmingham, Alabama, right? And so I was doing the Tuesday through the Thursday. I was just doing the 3 nights in the middle of the week. Then I was off to some other gig, but they had some big name headliner on the weekend. So I was not promoted at all. Like, if you got there, there wasn't even a picture of me on the wall. It was just a group of people that came to this huge theater, the Stardome in Birmingham. It's a huge theater that has the classic, they rise up around you, and you're underneath them like it's a Shakespearean play sort of deal. So it's a beautiful setup for comedy. And the MC went up, and he's a local cop there in Birmingham. And, he does fine. And then he brings on my buddy Colin Moulton, and Colin does very well. He doesn't do as well as he usually does, but he does very well. And then the MC goes back up and decides to do a bit both nights in between that was an impression, are you ready for this, of Tom Hanks's Forrest Gump having sex with Billy Bob Thornton's Sling Blade. Okay? Where he's actually like on the stage on all fours doing the Sling Blade joke of getting fucked in the ass, whatever the hell the joke. I don't know what the joke was, but A, they weren't even good impressions, and B, it's just like lowering the expectations of a punchline to zero. Like, he got it all the way down to the ground, and then he started mining. He started digging and digging to lower the expectations of the comedy as low as it could go. And so Tuesday night I go out on stage. I just suck. For 45, 50 minutes, whatever it is, to the point of where I'm just like, man, that was awful. That was just terrible. And then the next day, Colin and I spend a day together. We're laughing our asses off. We have a great time. We go to the show, and it's the same joke and whatever, and I get on stage, and I started to suck again, and I just couldn't take it anymore. And I just started screaming at them. And that day I'd been to the Civil Rights Museum there in Birmingham, so I started telling them how I wish Bull Connor would come in here with hoses and dogs and chase all you fucking assholes out of here. I wish I said last time somebody bombed this bad in Birmingham, Spike Lee made a documentary about it. It was just awful, vile stuff. Just spitting at them. And then it's like, all right, good night, go fuck yourself. And then I stood out there and I sold CDs. And I looked them all in the eyes because I hated them. And so I just expected to get fired. I thought, well, this is it. I'm not coming back tomorrow. Go back to the hotel. They didn't tell me anything that night. Go back to the hotel. They don't tell me anything. It got all the way up to 6 o'clock at night before the show on Thursday. And I thought, oh, my God, I'm going to have to go do this thing again. Finally, the owner of the club called me. He's like, yeah, I can't have you come back tonight. I'm like, thank God. But to his credit, he paid me for all 3 nights. So that was pretty cool.
Was there some takeaway from this experience? Did you learn anything?
Did I learn anything? The South doesn't like me as much as I wish they would. Did I learn anything? No. I'd do it all exactly the same way I did it before. I wasn't going to get laughs from those people anyway. They didn't like me. I didn't like them. It's nothing wrong with them. It's nothing wrong with the club. It's just all of the tumblers fell in line. A couple years ago, did 2 weeks in a row at the Looney Bins in Tulsa and Oklahoma City. And I was following this guy, Steve Hurst. And I love Steve Hurst. He's a really cool guy. But he was featuring, and he was way too good to feature. And he ended his set by stripping down to a Speedo with a Union Jack on the ass. And he had all this fake hair plastered onto him. And it was an Austin Powers impression where he would like go out into the crowd and grind on people while Eminem's song Lose Yourself was playing. And it killed. It destroyed. It was just like, people biting their chairs and jumping up and down like apes. So joyful. And then they would bring me on, and I ate a dick every night. They hated me for 2 weeks. For 2 weeks in a row, I had to follow Steve Hurst, and every night. I had like maybe one okay show out of that 2 weeks. But it's part of the job. Looney Bins don't have me back.
Are you able to win over noisy rooms Do you have to adjust your act at all?
This was something I got really good at really early because first 10 years of my comedy career was going to bars where there'd be just you'd call the bar when you're driving into town. This happened to me 100 times. Call the bar driving into town because you got to call from a payphone at that point. This is the 1990s, and you got to get directions. And you're like, hey, what time's the comedy show start tonight? And the bartender's like, there's no comedy here, man. And I said, no, I think there really is. I think there's comedy there tonight. Oh, hold on. Phone gets put down. Crash. Yeah, I guess around 9 o'clock it's going to start. The fucking bartender did not know there was a comedy show, right? So you get there and there'd be some written on fucking chalkboard that just said comedy. And if they try to spell your name, it'd be ridiculously spelled, right? And just nobody paying attention. But I got to go up there and do an hour, man. So what I started to do was I started to get really quiet and then really loud and then really quiet and just talk crazy so that they would just pay attention. Like if I could just get them to pay attention. And I could do that by just acting nuts for no reason and then really slowing it down. And so, yeah, there's ways to win over noisy rooms. But the first thing is you can't have any fear. You can't have any fear. When they hand you the mic, you got to remember that is your show. It is your show. You are in charge for a certain period of time. And maybe some of the crowd is going to challenge you on that being in charge, and you have to take the power back somehow. But yeah, there are plenty of ways. There are plenty of ways to win them over.
I know we got to wrap it up quick here, but I wanted to touch on the delivery of a joke. Say you got a joke that's good on paper. How do you sell it verbally to make it even better? How do you take it to the next level?
Right, you figure out in the joke what is the funny in the joke. Like you got to find, I call it the hero of the joke. What is the part of the bit that you really need people to understand? This is the joke. This is what we're delivering here. Now, when you hit the punchline, there's so many different ways to do it. Some people just subtly put it in there and then keep on talking about something else. And some people stop and let people ruminate on it. Some people bring up their voice at the end so you know it's over. And it just, people handle it. This is one of those things where there is no absolute on how to deliver the joke. But what I can tell you is absolute is if you have the perfect wording of a joke, stick to it. Don't screw around with the wording. Each word is important, and it's in there for a reason. And remember that it's rhythm. It's not just words, it's rhythm. The words, they're the meat of it, but the rhythm is the beauty. It's the beauty, and it's the performance of it all. So you got to see yourself that way. You're creating something. If you want somebody to listen to something, then that thing needs to be easy to listen to. So think about it. Think about your rhythm. Think about your timing. Think about that stuff. Because you can feel it when it's out of whack, man. When that timing goes south on you and you're just slightly off on your swing, kind of thing, it just, it's not there. And sometimes you can wait a second and it'll come around again. And you'll be able to catch that timing again. But, man, I mean, that's the thing. That's what separates comics from not. It isn't, I mean, it's partially the writing, but more than the writing, it is the delivery. It is the way that you present something, because we all know there's plenty of famous guys out there that people really enjoy, that if you read those acts, you'd be like, holy shit, this guy sucks. But whatever it is about him, he makes it charming and he makes it easy for people to swallow. Now,
I think the classic example of that is Mitch Hedberg, right? Like his jokes may not be funny on paper.
Oh no, I think for what I was getting at, that you could read an act that you don't enjoy the jokes to, but I don't see anybody reading Mitch Hedberg's act and not enjoying it. It's so weird and so good.
Well, I think
Mitch, here's something he used to do that I always loved. After the show, people would want to talk to him, and usually he wouldn't want to talk to them. So what he'd do is if somebody'd come up and start talking to him, he'd wave you over. He says, "Auggie, this guy wants to meet you," and then he just fucking walks away. It was brilliant. Fucking brilliant. Just walk away.
Speaking of fucking brilliant, everyone should check out Motivationally Speaking with Auggie Smith.
Right.
Incredibly wonderful podcast.
Yeah, there are, I don't know how many episodes there are out there.
They go up to number 12, but I think there's only 11.
I'm going to get around to doing something again, because I like this venue. I like the idea of the podcast. And I like the idea of basically you can do anything you want with it. So now the idea that I have, and I think that I'm actually going to do this, it started as a joke, but I think the next one I want to do is called Survey Says, and it's a roundtable discussion of the previous night's Family Feud, right? So you sit down, you tape an episode of the Family Feud, right? And you sit down with whoever you're with, and you watch it, and then you talk about the episode of the Family Feud, because Family Feud has all these beautiful dynamics involved in it, where the hosts have killed themselves of the Family Feud. The families that are on it, like they all fit a stereotype, and they try to fit a stereotype. Then the questions that they ask them and the different ways they answer it. You ever see a black family and a white family on the Family Feud? It's the funniest fucking thing in the world to watch the different ways that the families answer the questions. Oh, I think there's something there. So look for Survey Says. Coming soon to a podcast near you.
Anything else you want to plug? Twitter, Facebook? Where can we find out about shows?
I got a schedule for my road shows on AuggieSmith.com. I got 2 CDs, Smell the Thunder and Cult Following. You can do the Pandora Auggie Smith Station. I got a Twitter that I don't tweet enough, but yeah, AUGGIE. It'll lead you all the right places.
Auggie, I can't thank you enough for sitting down and talking.
Thank
really
you, young man.
it.
I enjoyed it.